صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode on the After Maghrib podcast. We are still in the 10 nights leading up to the 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura. And many of us are, inshallah, listening to this episode, possibly in our car on the way to a majlis, or coming back home, or in the comfort of your own homes, wherever you are around the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your azah, to accept your service, to accept your tears, and inshallah, always having the opportunity to be under, as we say in Iraqi, under the khayma of the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein, alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam. In today's episode, we want to look at the life of Lady Zainab, salamullahi alayha, the role she played in Islam, what she played, the role she had in Karbala on Ashura, and the relationship and that connection and that bond she had with Imam al-Hussein, Aba Abdullah, alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam. And we are joined by a guest that requires no introduction. However, as we always do, like every week, I would like to welcome my Husseini co-host, Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you keeping, Sayyidina?
I'm keeping well. I've listened today to about 3 masa'ib before actually going to a majlis. And I listened to the masa'ib of al-Baneen. So I've had my mind's all over the place when it comes to Karbala. How has your nights been?
Yeah, it's been intense, it's been heavy, it's been emotional. I feel like there's been a lot of inshallah presence of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra in the majalis that I've attended, and I can see the sincerity in the volunteers, in of course our speakers, our scholars, but also in the people around. And I'm trying to take it all in, and inshallah trying to benefit as much as possible, and trying to find ways to give back, inshallah, because Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gave everything for us.
Ahsant.
And we have to find something we can give back to him, no matter how small that might be. So inshallah, we want to give back, hopefully, to you all, to the audience, inshallah, today, by bringing you a guest who you have seen, alhamdulillah, a couple of times before and after Maghrib. He is our teacher, he is our brother, alhamdulillah, and we're so honored to be rejoined once again this year by none other than our dear brother and our dear teacher, Sayyid Abdullah Naqib. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Keeping, Sayyid.
That was an introduction I didn't deserve. Alaikum salam, Habibi. Honored to be here
We're
again.
so lucky to have you again in the UK. Alhamdulillah, this year you were speaking in Haider Islamic Centre in South London, which is a fantastic community.
It's a beautiful
community. How's your trip been so far?
Beautiful. Muharram, it's one of those interesting things. It's like a bittersweet taste, things that we really look forward to all year round, since Arba'in, you kind of look forward to the next Muharram. I wouldn't say excitement, but rather willingness to be in these atmospheres that we do have, and sadness, obviously, when we remember Abu Abdullah and see still till now Imam Mahdi is waiting for us to prepare ourselves. So in that sense, sadness, but in the same sense as well, seeing everyone come together, and rid themselves of everything that displeases Allah in this month, subhanAllah, the numbers that come in and want to be guided by Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is very inspirational. So it's beautiful in that sense, without a doubt. So yeah, that's what we're going to go towards every single year. We see, different communities around the world where you see kind of overlapping struggles. And each and every community, you see just how much Imam al-Hussein impacts their life, every single person in a different manner. And so when you come to the majalis, you see, I may say a whole lecture. One person will hold on to number, point one would hold on to point two, one would hold on to, just a line from the Quran or a line from what happened in Karbala, and they resonate with that. So you never really know. And the importance is, as well, I think, in the majalis, the fact is that when you see, all these different people coming the hospitality that every single center has had of a welcoming nature is changed over time. That's my experience. That used to be, very much a, how do I say this in the best way, but the welcoming nature was very different, to those that were known in the community not to be of a religious nature. But as it's progressed, you begin to see that, no, it's all of a sudden like, no, we need to even put more of an effort for the people that do not come to the masjid, do not come to the, Husayniyat, to actually grab them, holding on to this whole idea of Imam Hussein being the ark of salvation. Like, let's utilize this time to bring these people that don't usually come, don't know who Imam Hussein is, don't know what he stands for. But the fact is that Imam Hussein has chosen you to, put your footsteps into the masjid, into the Husayniyah. That welcoming nature doesn't, makes them not want to leave, makes them want to stay there, want to learn more, want to be part of the community. So over time, I think we begin to see that more and more, and we hear stories, we see things, and what's happening in the world now and the oppression around the world. I think a lot of people have kind of migrated to begin to understand what is this Shia school of thought.
Yeah.
What is this Hussein that you always say that he stood up against oppression? So all that coming together, the atmosphere right now is beautiful from a learning perspective and being guided perspective. For myself, first and foremost as well, and whomever holds on to the rope of Imam Hussein.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if I can just share before we actually open the discussion, is that I have been following your lectures.
Habibi.
So I'm up to date, alhamdulillah, with the topics you've chosen, which are very interesting, and it's topics that we don't normally hear outside of Muharram. So it's something we appreciate quite a lot. And I'm learning about Islamic unity. I'm learning about anger and things like this. These are things we deal with day to day in our lives, be it at work, be it our friends, be on the streets when we go. Even sometimes shopping in Asda or Tesco's here in the UK, we interact. Something can make us angry, or we have a conversation with another Muslim. Like, how do we deal? Like, these things really help us, inshallah, live our lives as good Hussainis, as good Muslims, as good mu'mineen. So thank you for all the lectures that you deliver for the community. Sayyidina, I think let's begin here, if it's okay with you.
Bismillah.
It's Lady Zainab, we know, alayhi salam, she has a high status. We all know. Sometimes, actually, I'm going to start here. I feel like as a community, we do a form of injustice by just saying or limiting the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen to just Karbala or just Ashura, and we just leave her within the parameters of Masa'ib. But there is more to learn from Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. What can we learn or know about her greatness and the role she played within Islam? I'm not sure where you want to take the conversation, but it's something I want to learn.
You wanted to look at it outside the scope of Karbala.
Yeah,
but
we will definitely get into that. But I want to know Lady Zainab outside of Karbala.
So we can go very, very early on. So Sayyidah Zainab, alayha salatu wa salam, we go to very young age. Because, sometimes you think, Zainab, obviously she's going to be great because, her mother is Fatima al-Zahra, her father is Ali ibn Abi Talib, the grandfather, Rasulullah. But, necessarily when you look at it through the Holy Quran, that's not really a prerequisite by any means. You look at, let's say, the story of Yusuf. They were all sons of a prophet and brothers of a prophet. But did they turn out as good? Question mark, But on the flip side, you could be married to someone that is a dictator and says, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, and still be one of the 4 greatest women ever to exist. So the Quran gives you the parameters. It doesn't necessitate that you're from this family, that you are a great person. Nor does it say that you're from a not so great environment, that you cannot turn out to be good. But the parameters are there, that yet within the same household, the wahi is there, the footprint of Jibreel is there. So you see, okay, there's already a guidance at such a young age. But with that, you need to ask yourself, but let's look at who Zainab is. So, the famous story that we see that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib at such a young age, he would go towards Zainab, he'd tell her, tell me 1. And Zainab would say 1. And he said, Zainab, say 2. And she wouldn't say anything. Zainab, say 2. doesn't say anything. And then he says, Zainab, why do you not say two? And the famous reply that comes is, how can the tongue that uttered the oneness of Allah say other than that?
SubhanAllah.
So at such a young age, some people don't allude to the fact that, we go towards khutbah of Fatima al-Zahra, yeah? We learn about the khutbah of Fatima al-Zahra, and you've seen it. It's massive. Someone comes to relate it, it's something amazing. We take time just learning the khutbah, Reading it takes time. Imagine learning the khutbah. Now imagine if you're a 4-year-old. Transmitter of the tradition of Fatima al-Zahra is a 4-year-old Zainab.
MashaAllah.
4 years of age. Narrates the whole speech of her mother Fatima al-Zahra. So greatness is there. And we see that characteristics. And then when you look at the life of Sayyidah Zainab, as hurtful as it is to say, but it's always being in a sense that it is leading up to prepare her for Karbala and what occurs afterwards. Because as we're going to discuss, the importance of her position and what she did impacts each and every one of us till today. So Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib has always been in a position where he tried and succeeded in laying down the foundations, which is Zainab. So I'll give you examples. So we know part of the Masa'ib that always they reiterate from the pulpits that no one saw the shadow of Zainab.
Yeah.
The fact that, even at night when she would want to go and visit Rasulullah, would she want to go to visit the grave of her mother, that he would go at the night because there's no light. And on top of that, he would be in front, Abbas in the back, Hassan and Hussein on either side, so no one sees, a glimmer of her height, etc. Yeah, and they wouldn't take a candle. The candle that they leave with, so you can see your path, they would extinguish the light in it. And that's why when you go towards the court, he would say, "Are you Zainab, the one that they used to extinguish the light?" So that aura followed her around. So much so that I came across a tradition that I found very, very interesting. And just this speaks to how Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib tried to always protect Zainab from everything. So the tradition goes, a personality came, I'm trying to remember his name now, Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais. So the Khalifas that preceded married their daughters to him. And so he'd come to Amir al-Mu'mineen and says, I want to ask for your daughter Zainab's hand. Now, something normal, yeah? Someone comes and asks for a hand in marriage. So, but look at the reply of Imam Ali. He said first, again he repeated that. And Imam Ali, it says that, leave this issue and do not mention her name on your tongue again, lest I cut that tongue of yours. So not just Zainab is protected, even uttering her name on your tongue is now a protection for me as Ali ibn Abi Talib. Look at the levels that Amir al-Mu'mineen has protected Zainab and cocooned her and guided her towards something, which we'll learn what that something is. So in that aspect of protection, you begin to see that he has things that other people will look at to be like, hold on, are you allowed to do such a thing? Example is when she was married, he would tell her husband that my condition is she follows Hussein wherever he goes. So laying down the foundations, so that you begin to see that from day one, Zainab has always been moving towards her role in Karbala, always moving towards that role, and they knew it. Every single one of them knew it. And that's why we have the traditions that say, Imam al-Hassan was born, Rasulullah cries, tells Fatima al-Zahra. Hussein is born, Rasulullah cries, tells Fatima al-Zahra. So they have a daughter. When they have a daughter, Sayyidah Fatima's like, men, calamities, tragedy. I have a daughter. And Rasulullah, the tradition says, he cries even more for this young daughter. And what's going on? is she also going to be in a state of calamity? And then she finds out what happens to this Zainab. And that's why throughout her life, she's always protected from being hurt, because they couldn't handle seeing Zainab hurt. Rasulullah had a certain love towards her. Fatima al-Zahra, the traditions always tell us that Zainab was in a moment where, even when Fatima al-Zahra is buried, Ali ibn Abi Talib is reciting Quran, falls asleep, Fatima comes to him. Zainab has awoken, doesn't have a mother. Make sure that she still has a father while you're here, Ali. Amir al-Mu'minin is struck. He's being carried, can barely walk. But at that moment, he sees Zainab and he says, lift me up, let me walk. I don't want Zainab's heart to be hurt by seeing me in such a state. Hassan likewise, when he's regurgitating all that poison into a bowl, sees Zainab, he says, Hussein, hide that bowl. So the protection in one level from hurting that heart of Zainab and preparing her for what is to come has been seen throughout. And so with these two parameters that go side by side, you begin to see what we look at in Karbala that's documented is indicative of the way that she was brought up, and that's what she achieved as a result of all those years of preparation. We're going to discuss, obviously, what we learned from Zainab during Karbala and what preceded. So, in more of a light, she was always being prepared for this. But that greatness, it stemmed from that period of time, even before Karbala. We only hear of that Zainab in Karbala, not necessarily what it took to become Zainab. So that's the essence. And there's so many things we can look at, like we stated, the knowledge that she had. Knowledge, you can go towards traditions that say, علمني رسول الله ألف باب من العلم يفتح من كل باب ألف باب. علمني, Rasul teaches you. Yeah, so you have a teacher. But then when it comes towards, say, the Zainab, not comparing, obviously, Amir al-Mu'minin also has divine knowledge, but in this aspect is trying to showcase that Rasulullah is the city of knowledge and he is his gate. You found that Imam Zain al-Abidin, in the travel after Karbala, while she's saying the sermon that she did, he says to her, you are عالمة غير معلمة. Amir al-Mu'minin says, علمني Rasulullah in that situation. And you find Imam Sajjad says about Zainab, عالمة غير معلمة. Meaning what?
A teacher without a teacher. Student
without a teacher.
Yeah.
So where's that knowledge coming from?
It's godly.
Quran says it and refers to it as ladunni when it goes towards the story of Musa and Khidr. It says علمناه من لدنا علما, from us. So now they have the ilm iktisabi that you can gain, and there's one that is bestowed upon you. So Zainab now all of a sudden, we have the 14 ma'sumin specific, and then you have the self-attained ma'sumin that have endeavored to perfect their characteristics to such a level that they are self-attained infallibles, because they have worked towards achieving that. And it's achievable nonetheless. So then you have that knowledge as one of the greatest characteristics someone can have. And that was found in Zainab from an early age of 4, and then it's showcased to another level when she was heard after Karbala.
There's so many things that you've mentioned which are so empowering to hear about Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha, but at the same time equally heartbreaking, especially when you talk about Amir al-Mu'mineen saying you should be wary of even mentioning her name on your tongue. And this is the same Sayyidah Zainab who was paraded through the bazaar and who was made into a display of entertainment, and whose modesty was removed. And unfortunately, we don't recognize sometimes the stature of her and what she did for the Holy Imam in his presence and in his absence as well. Before the podcast, we talked about how in some ways she fills the shoes of her mother, Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen, Salamullahi alayha, and how she acts as a motherly figure for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and also for the camp at large, you know, during the battle, before the battle, during and even after, how she assumes that motherly position, that maternal responsibility, how she assumed not just the position of a mother, but also in some cases acting in place of the Imam in his absence. When Imam Sajjad alayhi salam was unwell and he was unable maybe to physically stand up, of course he was the Imam and his responsibilities remained and his knowledge was not affected at all. But Sayyidah Zainab supplemented him with that knowledge, with that leadership, and she acted as the leader, and she challenged the enemies of Islam, the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with her knowledge and with the tarbiyah which she gained from her parents and of course her older brothers as well. I just feel like there's, and I think Sayyid, you alluded to this at the beginning, there's an, I don't want to say an underappreciation, because of course Sayyidah Zainab is everything. You cannot mention Sayyidah Zainab and without mentioning Imam al-Hussein, and you cannot mention Imam al-Hussein without mentioning Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. And they go hand in hand. And you can talk about the relationship with Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam and Sayyidah Zainab. You talk about the relationship between Bibi Ruqayya and Sayyidah Zainab, and the list goes on. But when I say underappreciation, maybe that's not the best word, but rather we don't understand, we can't comprehend her greatness. If Amir al-Mu'mineen, this just hit me now, based on what you've said, if Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, watch what you say when you say her name, then this is something for us to be aware of, surely. What is it about Sayyidah Zainab which, amongst her many attributes, you mentioned her knowledge, what about her status and her stature in that regard?
So like I want to touch up a few points before, like that's like the motherly thing that you mentioned is something like it's so powerful, because there's a lot of gestures that occurred in Karbala that kind of personify what you just said. Because Habib comes, you know, when the famous dialogue happens between Zainab and Imam Hussein, have you tested your men?
Yes.
Hilal ibn Nafi' goes towards the Mukhayyam. Habib comes. And when you talk about greatness and you ask, you know, what about her status? What happens in that moment? Habib comes, takes the swords out of their sheaths, and he takes an oath so that Zainab can hear that we are not ready to put them back into their sheaths, lest we put them in our enemies. So Imam Hussein gives Zainab permission. What's the next thing she does? Because we're talking about being a motherly figure and assuming the post of Fatima. What does she do? Before she goes outside to address them, she puts on the abba of her mother Fatima before she addresses them. Know who is my mother. Know who I am the daughter of when I address you. And at that moment, knowing her position, what does Habib begin to do? Throws himself on the ground, puts sand on his head, the dust on his head, and says, who am I? So Zainab's voice is heard by me. Who am I that Zainab speaks to me? And this is Habib. This is a person that, you know, al-faqih. Imam Hussein addresses him. If anyone has got knowledge of Zainab, it's definitely going to be him. So he recognizes that greatness of Sayyidah Zainab. So in the position in Karbala, the whole time, you'll see that Imam al-Hussein's, he has Abbas on the battlefield. But every time he goes to the tents, who's there? Zainab. Every time he drags a body in the tents, who's there? Zainab. Imam al-Hussein loses Ali al-Akbar. He goes the other way, doesn't he? Ala dunya ba'dak al-afa. Who's the one that tells him, Hussein, you're going the wrong way? Ali's over there. Zainab. When Radi'a comes back from the battlefield, he doesn't know where to put him. Puts him under his clothes. He's looking around. Who do I give Radi'a to? Can't give it back to Rabab. Call me Zainab. Till the last moments, you know. Mahlan, mahla. Ya ibn al-Zahra. He says, what kind of sister am I that I'm bringing a horse so you may ride out towards your death? She needed to be the mountain of patience that she was. And when you begin to see this about Sayyidah Zainab, you're like, okay, then there's something about her character that we are lacking, we do not understand. Because what kind of woman goes through all of this and is still a mountain of patience? Then you see her upbringing. Then you see that she knows that she, even after Imam al-Hussein returns back towards Allah, her mission starts then and there. It continues. Because when you stated, yes, Imam al-Hussein, when he died, Imam Sajjad, Zayn al-Abidin, was sick. Sheikh Mamaqani has a statement which you alluded to. He says, if we were to assume everything and understand what happened in Karbala, and taking into consideration the position and the sickness of Imam al-Sajjad, it's unjust not to say that Zainab, to a degree, held some of the weight of Imama on her shoulders.
Yeah.
What kind of personality do you need to be? What kind of character do you have to be in order for you to hold some of the weight of Imamate on your shoulders? And this can be seen. Imam al-Sajjad gives her the permission to give the fatwas on his behalf. Go and ask my auntie Zainab. What kind of personality is she? Her greatness is seen in so many different ways. To show you what Allah has given her. You go to Tell Zainabi. Tell Zainabi, we all go, we wipe our cheeks on it, we seek blessings from being in that position. What was Tell Zainabi? Tell Zainabi is a piece of earth that Sayyidah Zainab honored with her feet. You and I go and seek blessings from that. Because Zainab honored with their feet. Sayyidah Zainab, she did everything with certainty. When she did it with certainty, she knew very well what the outcome is. And that's why when she's found speaking towards Imam Sajjad, she speaks towards Imam Sajjad, she sees him in a very saddened state. Now, just to show you the foresight, that you can't envision the depth of this lady's knowledge and foresight lest you read this particular line. Because you're like, yeah, Zainab, yes, she had a good character, she was a strong woman, and she fought against oppression. It's much more than that.
Yeah.
Much more than that. She's seen everything we're doing right now. She's seen it as clear as day. From this statement, she goes towards Imam Sajjad, "Ma li araka tajudu bi nafsika ya baqiyata ahli." Why do I see you, in a saddened state? Oh, that which remains of my family. "Ma li araka tajudu bi nafsika ya baqiyata ahli." فإنه والله عهد من الله لجدك وأبيك. That by Allah, this, what's occurring, is a covenant that Allah has given to your father and grandfather. عهد من الله لجدك وأبيك وسينصب علم في الطف. Zainab saying to Imam Sajjad, there will be a flag that will be placed in Taf, being in Karbala, that will outlast the days and nights. And the enemies will come together to bring it down. وَلَا يَجْتَمِعَنَّ أَئِمَّةَ الْكُفْرِ عَلَى مَحْيِهِ وَتَطْمِيسِهِ. This flag, which is Hussein, this flag which is what occurred in Karbala, this flag which is the sacrifice, will be put in Karbala. The enemies, and we see over time, they will come together into joint effort to bring this flag down, to bring the name of Imam Hussein down, to bring the name and hide the truth which is Ahlul Bayt. Come together. But then what does she say? فَلَا يَزْدَادْ إِلَّا عُلُوًّا. Doesn't go down. Every time they try,
Goes up.
every time they try, elevates and elevates and elevates. Allah has a covenant. So when you see these words from Sayyidah Zainab towards Imam Sajjad, عالمة غير معلمة, words of foresight, all of a sudden, you begin to see Zainab is something else. And sometimes we really need to read between the lines to see, like, okay, now I begin to see the capabilities of Zainab. You know, when you read the tradition, when Zainab enters Kufa, you read that tradition. You can imagine everyone's celebrating them coming in. Yeah, they've been captured finally. Everyone's that you've come to see is happy. So there was noise, animals, people, streets full. The tradition, look what it says. It says, فَأَوْمَأَتْ بِيَدِهِ الْيُمْنَى. أَوْمَأَتْ بِيَدِهَا الْيُمْنَى. أومأت means she gestured, signaled with her right hand. Not a sound was to be heard. Nothing. Every single thing that spoke, made movements, whether it be animate, inanimate, everything was silent. Nothing, not a word. Then she spoke. Now you come and tell me, yeah, me, 2-3 people are talking. You think I can make them stop talking? A whole street in Kufa being paraded, animals, whips, soldiers, crying children, everything of the calamity that just occurred. She just gestures, not a sound. You come and explain that to me. We read it so many times. Have we contemplated over the fact that she just does that? Allah makes it possible.
It's God-given strength. And, Sayyidina, you said, she visioned, like she can see what's happening here today. And it's very similar to the lines where she says, and we always read it and we hear it from the pulpits and the manabars, that when she goes on to say, you will never ever erase our memory. Like she even saw that, and subhanAllah, we see this living here today. That we have hundreds of millions of Muslims commemorating Karbala, thanks to Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. Remembering Imam al-Hussein, thanks to Sayyidah Zainab. Saving the religion of Islam through Imam al-Hussein via Sayyidah Zainab.
Ahsant.
So Zainab played a critical role in Islam.
al-Masa'ib.
al-Masa'ib is one of the names, and it's one of the most painful names. Yani, to be called al-Masa'ib, it's not something easy, it's not something light.
How great must the tragedy be to be known as the mother of tragedy? It's just heart-wrenching, honestly.
With all that, what did she say? ما رأيت إلا
Jamila.
ما رأيت إلا جميلة.
Say it's wristband.
I saw nothing but the beauty of God.
I just saw it at the same time.
Yeah, subhanallah.
Like to say that in the face of tyranny. Like when people need to like really kind of understand that there's close proximity. Imagine walking into the most powerful person on the planet at that time. The most powerful person. And he parades you in front of people. He's got the head of your brother on his table. He's playing with his face.
La ilaha.
Breaks his teeth. And and he says the lines to showcase like, I am all powerful, look what I'm doing to you. And the famous lines that he says of poetry that showcases his disbelief. But the fact that when she is asked, how did you see Karbala? You and I, if we were to hear the tragedy, Zainab's eyes see something else. The lens she's looking at is a godly lens that she sees. And that's why, subhanAllah, so when you look at the tragedy in itself, every single person resonates with Zainab in a certain level. Like I'd like to ask, what do you guys resonate with in Karbala with Zainab? Out of all the things that occurred, what do you think is the most powerful position for Zainab in Karbala? Like that really showed you like this lady is, without a shadow of doubt, a manifestation of Allah's mercy, of Allah's patience. What's that one position for you?
As in a moment
in Karbala that you're like, this is for me what Zainab is.
I think I'm going to answer this from an emotional point because, being this nice, I've heard so much Masa'ib and we related so much with Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. And I would say she was the comfort. Like, she was the comfort to Rabab, to Layla, to Ruqayya, to Sukaina. Like, after the battle, after everything that happened, she was the one that looked after everyone. She ensured the the children didn't feel like they're orphaned. She would ensure that even water reached. I was reading the other day that after the Battle of Karbala, they drank water thanks to Sayyidina Zainab alayhi salam. So to a point where the mother of Tafl Radi', she went searching for her son
Because
though he was killed, and she knows he was killed, yet she still had hope now that she's quenched at first, that she can nurse him. And Sayyidina Zainab goes to console her, what are you doing? Come back to the tents. And that's the sort of conversations where she was always comforting them. So that's how I see Sayyidina Zainab on the 10th of Muharram.
For me, just to add to what you said, Sayyid, comfort to Imam Hussein Islam, and especially the kiss on his neck, destroys me every single time, because she was told that this is where your brother will be slain, from here, in this manner. And for me, that hits my heart, to be honest, and it just shows that she was given a message and a responsibility, and like you said, she had to carry that throughout her life with knowledge full well as to what was to happen, and she performed her duty in the absence of her mother for Abu Abdullah. And we know Sayyidah Fatima came to Karbala, and we know she was there, and we know she, in these days, she dreads the day of Ashura. She dreads the night of Ashura, and just the knowledge of what will happen to her son. But if there's one thing which adds solace, maybe perhaps to Sayyidah Fatima Zahra Salamullahi alayha, was that Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha was there in her place, in her stead, and acted as a comfort to her brother. And how beautiful is it that Imam Hussein, last year, Sayyid, we were speaking about Abu Fadl Abbas al-Islam and his relationship with Imam Hussein. Alhamdulillah, we have the opportunity this year. What a blessing it is to speak about now his relationship with his blessed sister. To talk about both siblings, alhamdulillah, in two consecutive years, 2 consecutive Muharrams is such an honor. To know that Imam Hussein had these two flanks, not in the military sense, but in his internal domestic sense, his brother and his sister who were there for him, committed to him. One said, I will go out and I'll defend you against the enemies with my armor, with my bare chest. He defended with his eye and his arms. He defended his brother. And Sayyidah Zainab, with her modesty, defended her brother. With her words, defended her brother. With her protection over his kinship, defended her brother. These are the things which are the most important. And just to add, beyond that, she defended belief. When you talked about when she went to the court and she was told, as you mentioned, said so beautifully, how Bani Hashim played with the kingdom like kings, as sport. And when she was asked, did you see what Allah did to you? Allah made this happen to you. And she said, no, Allah did not make this. You did this. Allah gave us nothing but beauty. And I saw nothing but beauty. These are the words of someone who embodies Tawheed. And I think that is something so pivotal for us to take away. That everything that she did was an embodiment of Tawheed.
Like that point, the kiss, sometimes you think to yourself, Fatima alayhi salatu wassalam, when she died, how old was Zainab? 4?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
She had that conversation with Zainab, and she was 4 years of age. Like, do you know, like, if we
50 plus years.
She'd remember that.
Wow, subhanAllah.
And she'd have to carry that until the moment when Imam al-Hussein has no one. She knew it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. She did definitely embody Tawheed, otherwise she would not have been able to do what she did. For me, I think the greatest moment is the fact that when you look at Imam al-Hussein during the whole event of Karbala, every time someone would fall, Imam al-Hussein would offer him as a sacrifice. Oh Allah, accept from me. Oh Allah, for my Radi', let this not be harder on you than losing Naqat Salih, for example, to the end of it. And then for me, the greatest moment that showcased the patience, the strength, and the tragedy in the same time of Zainab was when you think to yourself, for over 50 years, every time you wake up, you look upon the face of Abu Abdullah and you see his smile. You see his lips that are not dry from the thirst. And at that very moment, you think to yourself, she's seen him every single morning. And then she sees his head on a spear. But even then, she said, I still have a mission. And for me, the greatest moment was in the night of the 10th. Whilst she's running from one tent to another, exhausted, trying to protect the next Imam from being attacked, sees the children, some of them burnt, some of them trampled by the hoofs, but she says, no, I still have to do something before anything else. So she goes into the plains of Karbala, between the headless bodies. Who knows, maybe she passed Aoun, maybe she passed Muhammad, maybe she passed others that she grew up with from her family members. And then she sees what remains of the body of Abu Abdullah. You know, it's trampled body, what remains, you know, like back and forth, 10 of the horses, whatever remains of the body of Abu Abdullah. And she places her hands, you know, once a body that moments ago she embraced, what remains of it, she puts her hand under the body and she raises that which remains of the body and she says the famous lines, "Oh Allah, accept from us this sacrifice." You know, when she looks down, she sees what she remembers to be the remains of Abu Abdullah. So for me, that notion of Sayyida Zainab is, without a doubt, in my opinion, the greatest moment that showcases who Sayyida Zainab was, what she stood for, and her character, how she was brought up, and how she knew what lies ahead. And from that moment, before she had Abbas, she had Hussein, but from that moment she was alone. She was taking the role of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, taking the role of Imam al-Hussein. She was a protector and a guide for that which remained from Ahl al-Bayt at that moment. So for me, that was the greatest position that she was in, and the most difficult at the same time. From then on, how much should she go through? You know, we have the tradition that says, you know, لا أبكين عليك بدل الدموع دمع. Imam Sahib al-Zaman. So, you know, one of the scholars, he sees Imam Zaman in the dream, and he says, Imam, you know, you say about the tragedy of Karbala that you cry tears of blood. And he asks him, who do you cry it for? Do you cry for Hussein? He says, no. If it was for Hussein, he would cry if he saw what I saw. Was it for Abbas? He says, if Abbas saw what I saw, he would also cry with me. Ali Akbar, Qasim, all of them would cry. He says, why then do you cry tears of blood? He says, for my auntie Zainab. What did she go through? What did she see? That which we know of and that which we do not know of. How did she do what she did? Being paraded from one city to another, how did she handle Ruqayyah? You know, and I think that I end the tragedy of Zainab with Ruqayyah because, you know, the moment when you see, you know, a child crying and you want to give her something and they bring her the head of her father. You know, a 4-year-old, you bring the head of a father to a 4-year-old, and all of a sudden from her crying, she becomes silent. You know, at that moment Zainab's thinking, you know, like, oh, you know, she's asleep. Finally, she got some rest. We've been thrown from one city to another. You know, as the Sajjad would say, my auntie, remove her. May Allah increase your reward. Azam Allah lakil ajr. Why? What now, Sajjad? We've lost so many people. He says, my sister Ruqayyah has returned. But you know what the tragedy is? She took Ruqayyah and she tried to take her everywhere to get washed. No one would wash Ruqayya. You know, she's asking why. Why is no one washing her? They would say that she has a disease.
La ilaha illallah.
Because every time they try to wash her, they see her body like, no, she's filled with disease. And Zainab would say to her, this is not a disease. This is the bruises from the whips, from the spears, from the sword tips, from walking on the hot desert sand. Such was what Zainab went through, what she had to see, endure. When she went back to Karbala and Arba'in, what did she have to say towards Abbas? What did she say to Imam al-Hussein when she returned? Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The tragedy of Zainab, you never listen or hear the name of Zainab without your heart being in a state of mourning. You can't. Zainab, from the day she was born, 4 years of age, till the moment that Allah took her life, constantly.
She saw so much, Sayyid.
Constantly.
Went through so much. And from a young age, as you alluded to, say, like from the death of her grandfather, Rasulullah, the attack on the house of her mother, Fatima, Amir al-Mu'mineen, her father, Al-Hasan al-Mushtaba, Imam al-Hussein, and then beyond, Sham, we hear. I don't know, yani Karbala is not something easy. Yani we cry, we remember these moments, and we try to relive or try to imagine or picture what her eyes saw. But Zainab saw something, and I should never see. Who sees their brother's head on the spear? Who sees, we always say, Assalamu ala Shayb al-Khatib, wa Jism al-Salib, wa Khadd al-Tarib. This is not simple words to imagine. Yani, Sadaq, we say, Sa'ad Allah qalbik.
Like on top of all the tragedy, that hardship she goes through, she's walking with the head of her brother in front of
Allahu
her.
Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
As much as we yearn to be known as Husseini, we must be yearn to be known as Zainabi. Everything we strive for in this world, we see
She embodies.
We see the oppression, the genocide. We see day-to-day violations of goodness, and the violations of sanctity of human life. Everything is found in the way she manifested justice. Truly, the Mahdawi call that we yearn for is the Zainabi call that we mourn, the Husseini call that we mourn. They are one and the same. The story of Sayyidah Zainab is so important to us. We have to adopt it as our identity, and inshallah we will be amongst those who she will give her shafa'at to, her intercession for. Inshallah. Sayyid, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always give you more opportunity, more tawfiq to continue the dhikr of Abu Abdullah and continue the musibah of Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha, inshallah, so that you have the opportunity to do this until the last breaths, inshallah, of your life, and inshallah to be given all of the intercession in dunya and akhirah. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Your lips, your tongue, your efforts, your steps that you take in khidmah as a teacher, as a speaker, as a scholar, these are not things that we should take for granted. We owe you a lot as recipients of your wisdom and knowledge, and we ask Allah to always give you more and to allow you to share more.
We owe everything to Ahlul Bayt, and indeed Zainab is not just, people look at her to be a guide just for women, but I don't think any man can do that which Zainab did. So she's a role model for each and every individual, like you stated, that calls himself a Husseini. We should now call ourselves Zainabis in the same light. So inshallah, we do owe them everything.
We do.
What we have now, the adhan, the religion, everything is because Zainab, well, firstly, it's because Imam al-Hussein sacrificed himself, but it's because Zainab protected the message afterwards and showcased why Abu Abdullah died on the 10th of Muharram.
Sayyid, I know we're coming now towards the end of the episode, and I just want this to be like a reminder to our listeners, to our viewers, and to myself. We asked a question last week, me and Ahmed, and we said, like, why did Imam al-Hussein go on this God-given mission, on embarking on this journey towards Kufa and then up at Karbala? But I just want to hear it from you, Sayyidina. The words he said of why he left, why he embarked on this journey. The Arabic lines and then the translation so that the listeners can hear it, inshallah.
This was when he was, before he left.
Yes. Because it's such an important, if there's something to learn from Karbala, from the 10 nights we've been commemorating, and the majalis we've been attending, and the relationship, a connection we're trying to build with our Imam, we need to know why.
100%.
Because he said these words, and it makes you understand.
A lot of this is, sorry Said to cut you off, but while Sayyid Abdullah was looking, a lot of this, I believe, Said can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Sayyid is also going to come to a lot of this in his forthcoming nights. His majalis, I got a sneak peek of his list, which is really cool. But
so you have a head start.
I highly, well, I don't know, but I highly recommend, inshallah, everyone listens to Sayyid Abdullah's fascinating lectures. We have heard, 4 now? And tonight's lecture, which was absolutely amazing on Salah, was fascinating. But the cause of the Imam, and some of the letters which the Imam wrote before and even in Karbala, I believe Sayyid Abdullah is going to talk about in some of his forthcoming nights. I think everyone, inshallah, at home should make an effort to listen to it.
So the lines, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وإني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما وإنما خرجت لإطلاب النجاح والصلاح في أمة جدي محمد أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. So he says, I did not rise up for the cause of wickedness, amusement, corruption, or oppression, but I rose up to reform the Muslim community of my grandfather. I want to promote good and forbid evil. So in a nutshell, Islam. Anytime you see Islam is going down, you remember that Abu Abdullah gave us the principles to rise up again. That's why whenever you see oppression around the world and what's happening, the first to rise are those that have Abu Abdullah teaching them the principles. And that's why you see on the forefronts, it's the lovers of Ali, the lovers of Fatima, the lovers of Hussein and Zainab are the first to defend against oppression because they have these principles of Abu Abdullah established. And this was from a letter that he wrote to his brother, telling him exactly why he's going upon this particular movement. And he relayed it back onto us to see that this is exactly why he rose. This is why he began his movements. This is his principles that he stands by. And that's the things that we need to learn and hold on to and apply to our lives, inshallah.
Inshallah. Ahsantum, Sayyidina. It's been an amazing episode.
It's been a beautiful episode.
I felt like I truly connected and understood the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen better than I did an hour ago. So thanks to you.
It's been a sad episode. It's been a really
and honestly, Sayyidina, for those listening and watching, Sayyid is a very good friend of the podcast, but off the podcast, you're like a brother to us.
Habibi.
And we learn from you and we see the sincerity and the purity and the service of the work that you do, and inshallah Allah gives you more tawfiq.
There are very few people like you, Sayyid Abdullah.
You honor me.
And everyone at home needs to know what a man, mashallah, you are.
Honor me.
You are such an inspiration to all of us. May Allah always give you more, inshallah, and always allow us to be close to you so we can continue to learn from you as well.
Well, I'm not deserving.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your kind words.
Inshallah, guys, we'll be back inshallah next week. We will be, if I'm not mistaken, on the day after Yawm al-Ashur and after our Masa'ib and after our Aza, we will be reflecting on the tragedy of Karbala and talking about what we've learned in these nights, these 10 nights from Hadram. And we ask you in these blessed nights to please remember us in your dua. Please remind us how we can improve as well, as if you have the opportunity. But most importantly, make the most of these nights. Shed your tears, beat your chest, be unapologetic in your azar and in your mourning for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. and remind yourselves that this is our identity and that we connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this. And inshallah, we will continue our goal to continue talking about this in the coming weeks. We'll be back next week, inshallah, and we'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.